So this call is really about going over the remaining improvement proposals that we haven't gotten to yet in the first and second calls. Most of those are around smart contract layer improvements. So if you were on the first call, you remember we talked more about sort of UI, UX things, about ways to change the actual map interface that's been deployed so far. This call is more kind of at the base layer, changing around the smart contracts. So, obviously a little bit more long-term in terms of what we're trying to do. It would, it's not something that we can have done in the next month or two. It's a longer-term fix, but there were tons of ideas on Discourse, so that's why we wanted to kind of organize these calls and start to have these discussions around these improvement proposals. If we have time, we can talk about the sort of FIP process that people have been thinking about, like sort of an equivalent of like a Bitcoin or Ethereum improvement proposal, but for foam, to sort of formalize these proposals going forward. I'm not sure we're going to have time to go over that, but we'll see what we get to. And then third thing I threw on here was talking about funding for community efforts, but I really don't think we're going to get that far. So we'll see. But just to, quickly introduce myself and give other people an opportunity to introduce themselves if they want to. My name is Coleman. I am just a foam community member. I do not work as a foam employee. But I got involved, I guess, initially on Discourse and some of the other channels, had some proposals that I proposed, and then just decided to, organize these calls as a way for people to start talking about some of the proposals that are out there and vetting them and discussing them as a community, sort of in a way that's easier to do than just over the Discourse threads. Is there anybody else on the call that wants to introduce themselves before we start?
I can introduce myself quickly. I'm Arthur, head of growth. Oh, I have a nice little light on my face, but head of growth at Foam. And thanks for all the work, Coleman. It's really nice to see.
All right, so we can go ahead and start unless somebody else wants to introduce themselves. But let's jump into the remaining proposals. So like I said, these are mostly about improvements or changes to the smart contracts that underlie the foam map game, with challenging, voting, and everything else around that. So I organize these slightly differently than I did in other community calls. I think the way that that I've done it here is going to be a little bit easier to understand. So in bold, you can see kind of like what the goal is that we're trying to accomplish with the proposals, and then listed underneath is the different proposals that kind of accomplish that same goal. I think this helps us kind of not lose sight of what overlaps and what we may, what is kind of this trying to accomplish the same thing that we may only want to choose, one or the other for. So some of them are like that, where we may only want to choose one or the other if we choose to do either. This one is not like that. I guess this one is kind of just about standardization of different things. So we could potentially adopt both of these, but I'll read through them and then let's discuss if anybody has any ideas or opinions. So the first one is about changing POIs to make them into non-fungible tokens. So right now, POIs are not NFTs, but there has been some discussion about maybe converting them into NFTs, kind of like the way signals already are, so that they could be traded. So basically, you'd be able to apply market dynamics to POIs, so that you could potentially sell a POI or buy a POI, or trade it in any way you want. I think it's a great idea. There was a lot of discussion around how to reward cartographers for placing points, because right now there's not really any way to do that on the map besides winning a challenge that you didn't initiate. This might be one way to sort of reward cartographers for their accomplishments by allowing people to sell their POIs to whoever values them the most. Does anybody have any opinions on that? I mean, like I was saying, I think it's a good idea because why wouldn't you want to allow POIs to be owned by whoever values them the most? Whether it's maybe right now a lot of people are just sort of staking points that are close to them or that like they've been to before. But if the map actually starts to become sort of used by businesses and other people to find information, geographic information, then I think it makes sense to allow like a business owner or a homeowner, property owner to buy the POI if they want to, or to allow an early staker to sell off that POI if they really have no real stake in that point and they're sort of done, owning it. Is there any opposition to this? Does anybody have any opinions?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea to me. Obviously, the devil's in the details, but sounds interesting.
I
Yeah.
I guess I have one question, which is just like, could it lead to kind of like domain squatting behavior, like we see with like domain names and things like that, where if something ever may become valuable, I would register a point for like Twitter headquarters, let's say, and then sell it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that it could sort of lead to domain squatting, but I think that that's kind of in our case, a good thing if people are posting POIs to the map early, even though they don't have any relation to that POI, as long as the information is correct, I don't really see a problem with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it's just as long as you're disambiguating between like the owner of the POI and anything associated with the place itself, which right now there is nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a really interesting interplay between like the validation process and like concepts like squatting, because it would force anyone to really also contribute good data. I mean, I definitely think it's an interesting idea. Right,
because I guess if they squatted but they didn't have the correct data, anyone can come in and challenge it. So it's like if we're talking about actual domain names, but you can have other people challenge the ownership of the domain name if they are sort of displaying incorrect information in some way.
Yeah, I think the combination of like being able to challenge it and also that it doesn't necessarily, there's no applications that would grant certain privileges based on ownership of a POI at this time, make it not a very strong counterpoint, just like raising it, I guess.
Yeah.
How does it look with NFT standards for retractable? I know the Signal works like that, right?
Yeah, like being able to like remove the POI if it's an NFT. Is that what you're wondering? I mean, I assume you'd be able to. It would just be an NFT burn. Like you could burn. I'm pretty sure you can burn NFTs. So I think it's possible. But I guess that's a good thing to like note down. We could check with somebody who knows more. All right. So that's a big one, and that's a very long-term one. But I thought it was really interesting, and I think it's good to start the discussion around that now. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one is signals. Signals already are NFTs, but there was a proposal on Discourse to make the signal metadata follow OpenSea standards So for those of you that don't know what OpenSea is, it's basically an online depot of NFTs where you can buy like all sorts of, you can buy or sell all sorts of NFTs, whether it be crypto kitties, Gods Unchained cards, art of any kind. It's basically one place you can go to buy and sell NFTs. And I think it's a good proposal if it's, you know, depending on the workload, to make signals adhere to that standard so that people can buy and sell signals on OpenSea. Does anyone have any thoughts around that?
I guess it would just be nice to see like if there's an alternative, just like so we understand better the trade-offs of OpenSea standards versus other ones, but no other like thoughts beyond that really. No reason not to do it.
Yeah, I'm not, and I don't even know of any other like places where you can buy and sell NFTs. Does anybody else know of any? OpenSea is like the only one I've heard of.
You can trade them on 0x now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So just
I can try to find a couple of examples and share them with the group later.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll add them to the discourse later, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
One thing about the OpenSea standards, as far as I understand it, there is kind of an interesting aspect, which is that I don't know if this is in the standards or only in OpenSea's front-end display, but we've had issues with IPFS hosting of images before. With some of our NFTs, and that doesn't follow OpenSea standards as far as I know. So because the load time is too long, which means that you need to host it on a different server, which maybe over time doesn't really say jive with the decentralization aspect. If you, for example, host it even for a long time over something like a Amazon web service, which is what many people are doing today. So there is kind of this pivot within the NFT industry towards classical database structure for hosting the images because of like the load times with IPFS. And I think complying with OpenSea standards would also mean that.
Okay. That's a good call out then, because I did not know about that.
Sorry, Arthur, could you just say the OpenSea standards do maintain hosting the images on IPFS, or they're moving away from it?
From my understanding, they don't. We've had issues with OpenSea basically representing our IPFS-based NFTs on their on their
because
platform.
they are doing it IPFS-based. Okay, got it.
They're not doing it because they have a load time cap on 300 milliseconds or something like that, if I remember correctly, and IPFS doesn't fulfill that.
Okay, so the issue is that you were hosting the images on IPFS and it was not interacting with their system properly.
Yes, and with basically something that has become a standard within the NFT industry now.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's a big, I guess, issue with this one. It seems like, you know, I would think that OpenSea would eventually want to support IPFS, but you know, I have no idea. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to look more into, I guess. So I'll move on. So next sort of goal that we wanted to accomplish is fixing points of interest without having to fully remove them. So one proposal is allowing for POIs to be editable, and this is just the metadata, like the phone number, description, address, I think. But basically allowing the POI owner to edit the POI metadata either, I guess, before a certain period of time or for a small fee. This is something that a lot of people have sort of called for. What do people think about this?
I think it's a really strong proposal if it's implementable. I mean, it's more. I feel like this is a pretty clear, good proposal. It just needs to be estimated to work. Like, yeah, what are the development time and cost of such a?
So what I've heard is that it would require a production ready, which I have in the notes, production ready ENS or IPNS, because the way IPFS works, where the metadata is hosted now, you can't, I don't know if I understand it well enough to explain it, but basically IPFS can't support this. So we would have to wait for ENS or IPNS to kind of come online. So I guess it's a more of a longer term thing in that regard, but I agree that it's a strong proposal.
Do you know how it works with backwards compatibility with the existing POI data? If it's based on an IPNS or ENS editing possibility?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. That's something I have to look more into.
I guess I have a question about this. Is this something where you think that any change to POI, like say I want to update the phone number and I'm not the owner, would it make sense to open that up the same challenge process that a general POI gets, or is it possible to give it like a period of time where the owner can just like straight up accept it, or should that also, like, what do you think about the flow of challenges?
The way that I was envisioning this was just the owner of the POI being able to edit their own POI. And then these other two proposals here are kind of around what you're saying of having other people being able to edit other people's POIs. But this one was really just more like the POI owner being able to do it. But I mean, I'm trying to think like if there's a way to do both. I don't know, maybe like you could have something where the point sort of opens back up, it re-enters a verification period once either the owner or another person, and that's really just these next ones. I'll just move on to the next ones.
Okay.
So the second one is like being able to soft challenge only a certain part of a POI. So like if a phone number is blank or incorrect, you could like maybe for like less than the minimum deposit, like for like 10 foam tokens or something, you could challenge just that select piece of the POI. The problem that I see here is that, I mean, I like other people being able to edit other people's POIs so that like all the blank phone numbers and websites on the map could potentially be filled in and stuff like that. But I just don't see if these kind of reopen as a real challenge with a vote and it's for less than the minimum deposit, I don't think it's going to get much activity or any activity from anyone voting wise, because we're already seeing that like points with a minimum deposit of 50 foam like rarely get voted on by anyone unless it's their point or they're the challenger.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me.
I'm liking 1 and 3. This is
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah. So let me go on to 3.
Implementation of 1 and 3, kind of removes 2. I mean,
yeah,
I
agree
1
with
and
that.
3. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me I'll read over 3. So this one is being able to declare the new state of a POI during a challenge and having then the voting period initiate, the reveal period and all that. And then the proposed change would occur automatically if the challenge won. So basically the way I see this is when you initiate a challenge, you can either challenge the point and have it removed, or you can challenge and edit it, where you would be able to edit like a certain element of the POI. And I like that idea. I don't know what you guys think.
Personally, I think all challenges should have number 3 as part of the process. In other words, you can add challenge without actually saying what the right information should be, and is basically taking advantage of the information you already have. So the challenger says this is wrong, so they already have that information. So why not take advantage of that fact and have the challenger declare new states, so we're not actually losing points, so it doesn't become some kind of zero, some kind of
Right.
loss. For
Right.
every challenge point, we're actually making some kind of gain. We're optimizing the map. So I think it should be actually mandatory to actually challenge that you correct the states to what you're saying it should be.
I guess so. Initially I felt the same way, but then I thought more about it, and I was in terms of making it mandatory. But what if somebody just plots a point in the middle of nowhere and says that it's something that doesn't exist? In that case, there may not really be any sort of edit that you would want to do or could do. It would just be that the point needs to be removed from the map. So I mean, how do you feel about that? Because I feel like that's kind of an issue with making it mandatory.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, they could be. I mean, this is all tentative, and I guess if you're going to implement something like this, you start looking at all of the variables. But yeah, there should be a variable, something that actually takes that into consideration. But I guess just the point. My point is that the work put into actually challenging should be made all kind of be in form where the map is actually gaining from that challenge. So and so we could say, well, could be an option. Maybe it's not mandatory.
Yeah.
You check an option to say this is an invalid point because it's not there at all, or something like that. Then that point gets removed from the map. But if you're saying the phone number is incorrect, or if you're saying the website is incorrect, then you should be correcting that metadata with the challenge.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess, so I like having the option of being able to fully remove it or edit it. Is there any way that we could incentivize a challenger to edit it rather than just remove it? Or do you think that's not something we should?
The validators will handle that, right? So if the validators think that a point should be updated because it doesn't have a phone number, and the challenger should just update the point, they would vote against a challenge that's opting to remove the point.
Right.
So I think it gets handled by validators. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, right now, when people are just challenging a point based on a blank phone number, people are voting it down. So if if somebody was initiating a full challenge to remove a point just based on a missing phone number, the validators might shoot that down, and it wouldn't be successful. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really like this approach, and I feel like even the wording of it is really elegant in a way where state
Right.
the POI is pointing to a specific geohash maybe, and then the new state would point to a different geohash if it was in the wrong location, or it points to a specific IPFS address, and then the new state points to a different IPFS address. I think it's just a super elegant change or suggestion.
Okay. Any other ideas on that before we move on? I'll take this as a one that has some pretty strong consensus for now. All right, I'll go on.
I just want to add that for number one, I like number one as well, because this is a brand new map. We have no idea what we're going to be doing, say, a year from now, and to give the cartographers the ability to actually edit and change or make minor changes to POIs they actually own. I think that's a good idea. I mean, some folks are still in discourse talking about the making changes to the metadata and to various parts of the POIs. And if those changes are made, then I don't want to have to actually kill like 50% of my points just because an update was actually made to the map. I want to be able to go in there and actually add, for instance, a tag, and not have to say delete all of those points because now you have a more a better tag for the points I have on there, and then they all get challenged. I want to be able to go in there, make a change, and update the state of my POIs. And I think it will become even more meaningful as we start getting folks and cartographers who actually have 500 points, 1,000 POIs. I mean, we need to be able to actually edit these POIs with the metadata and not have to to go through the whole challenge or remove the whole points
Right.
process.
I agree on all that.
How do you think that validators would be able to, review edited POIs or something like that? I think that it would make it more difficult with the existing tools. Not to say that it's impossible to change those, but I think that it puts an additional amount of work on validators to be checking for edits, and then revalidating the same points kind of over and over.
I guess I would imagine it as being it would just be a different type of a challenge. So like it could still be displayed as a challenge in whatever interface we're using. I don't know, maybe there could be like two different subsets of challenges, one full removal and one for an edit. But I don't know, I guess I hadn't thought that deeply into it yet.
Yeah, like maybe the point reverts back to pending state or something, and then validators are expected to review pending states. I'm not sure. I think it's solvable, but I'm not sure at the minute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're in agreement that a lot of us like 1 and 3. So let's move on. So the next sort of goal that we are trying to accomplish is requiring challengers to create, not only remove information from the map. And I guess it's a little similar to what we just talked about, but it's also a little different. This one is more kind of about having minimum requirements for challengers in terms of the information that they have posted on the map. So they can't, so basically, I guess we'll talk about the proposals and you'll see what that looks like. But the first one is requiring a certain percentage of challenge rewards to be used in POI creation before being unlocked after a challenge. The second one is requiring a certain number of POIs to be placed with challenge rewards before those challenge rewards are unlocked for a challenger. And then the third one is requiring a certain ratio of like points created versus points challenged, or tokens used in endpoint creation versus tokens used in challenging in order to challenge. So like one sort of a specific implementation of that could just be like a 1-1, where you can only challenge up to the amount of tokens that you have staked on the map in points of interest. My personal opinion, I like the third one the most, where you could just set a ratio of basically points or tokens used in creation versus challenging. That could be, I mean, we could even discuss that kind of being a new parameter that could be moderated by the community. Something to kind of, another thing in addition to kind of like the vote quorum that would thwarts or moderates the amount of challenging happening on the map. The other two, the problem that I see is that you could, I guess, require a challenger to use their tokens, in some way before it's unlocked, but then they could obviously, immediately pull it out of the new points. They could just create junk points. I guess if they don't get challenged, then they could pull them out, or they could create real points and just pull them out. So what do people think about these proposals?
I don't think they're necessary if we go with option 3 above. to challenge or to make challenges be a replacement of state instead of just removing the point. I think that solves the underlying problem of just removing from the map instead of improving the map overall. I think it totally gets solved by the network participants, by the validators, by the voters, and there will be no need to require challengers to add value into the map instead of only removing value. I also think that these proposals kind of came at a time when there were a lot of challenges and a lot of contentious challenges, and that's really slowed down after the community kind of banded together against this one challenger. So I think that we've already seen a case where the community kind of solves its own problem with contentious challengers. And then, in addition, this option 3 is, in my mind, a superior way to solve challengers, making challengers add value back into the map instead of only removing value.
I think there's something interesting about the implications on POI creation incentives with the challenging point 3. I agree with you, Caleb, but there is, if the problem is not only, the problem that should be solved is not only the negative effects of challenging on the map, but rather also could be seen as distributing the earnings from challenging to POI creation as well. In some way, and through that incentivizing POI creation, it's an interesting thing to look at.
I think that the map right now is in a place where challenging and voting is like really good value, and there's a really strong reason to participate in those activities. So I think that side of kind of the incentive, like triangle or whatever you want to call it, is really, really strong. And by adding additional requirements on challenging and effectively validating information, it might actually make the value of verified information go down, because not as many people will go through those hurdles to participate in validating the information. So in terms of growing the new points on the map through extra rules, I think that could have an adverse effect on how much information gets validated, or how quickly information gets validated.
Yeah, I will tend to agree with Caleb on this one. Number 3 just seems to solve for that attack surface, where we just don't only have this one-sided challenges. Any challenge in of itself, it's not diminishing the map in the sense that it's reducing the amount of POIs. And we also have to think that to challenge, on the other side, you must know what the correct information should be, and you're just correcting the information. It seems as though by doing that, any challenge, we cannot have a serial challenger who just challenges. I mean, they're actually adding value to the map. And then the restrictions you see here for the second section, I've not really gone through the whole thing, but nevertheless, there are restrictions. And it seems number 3 should do it. We have to ask ourselves, what are we
talking about? This number 3, right?
Yes, this number 3.
Okay.
Sorry. So we have to ask ourselves, though, what is that number 3 for, and what is the whole of the second section for? In other words, whoever proposed that, what are they trying to mitigate against? And I think number 3 actually, takes care of whatever answer I could come up to in my head right now with that. It basically, diminishes any kind of serial challenging attacks that are basically without value. So I see number 3 as just, it's a more kind of a simple way to take care of the situation, instead of, restricting who can or how many can how many POIs or how many challenges you could actually can make.
Caleb, do you have the numbers on the top of your mind in terms of reason distribution among challenges and how many would fall into the, because if it can alternate between challenging or and replacing and removal, how many would potentially fall into the removal from the existing challenges is an interesting question, because it's depending on the distribution there, it doesn't actually solve the problem maybe to the full extent.
Can anyone describe it? Sorry, Caleb, go ahead. The question was for you.
I think that the ones that would be removed are invalid points, duplicates, and maybe location-based ones. But those are pretty much a minority of the challenges, since most challenges are based on metadata. So if we allowed updating, proposing a new state as part of a challenge, I think that we would have more points on the map. Absolutely, I think we would have more points on the map. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, these two sections, they do kind of seek to accomplish similar things, and they really could have probably been combined. But it sounds like there is a lot of agreement around this third one, as opposed to going with any of these options. So I'll move on. And some of these are, again, a little bit similar, but a little different from what we just talked about. The kind of goal here is adding a, I guess what I called a defender's advantage for verified points. So right now, everyone knows that there is an application period where you stake your point, and then you wait, I think it's 5 or 7 days in order for the point to pass through the verification period. And if no challenge has been initiated at that point, then you can update your point status to verified, so going from blue to green. There kind of has been some proposals to make the verification a little bit more worthwhile and meaningful, because right now the only thing that having a verified point really does for you is that it allows you to remove your point, whereas when you're in the application period, you cannot remove the point and it can be challenged. Kind of on the whole other end though, which I have listed a little bit further down in the page, there's also a proposal to just completely remove the verification period altogether and have the sort of new point call out be a UI feature. So two kind of totally separate ideas there. I felt like the second one is worth mentioning if we're going to talk about this one, with sort of increasing the functionality of the verification. But yeah, so the first one is increasing the proportion of tokens required for challenging versus staking when the point has already been verified. So basically, if you have a verified point, it would take, I don't know, something like twice, like let's say you've got a point for 50 foam. The first time somebody challenges it, they can challenge it for 50 foam. But if they want to challenge it again after it has already passed through a previous challenge and survived, then they would have to challenge maybe 100, even though the point owner still only has 50 at stake. Then the second one is increasing the Evoque Quorum parameter, which we have kind of talked about in the past, but it's the amount of votes that have to be in favor of removing a point in order for it to be removed in a vote. But increasing the vote quorum specifically for verified points of interest. So like basically there would be like maybe 2 separate vote quorums, one for regular points and one for previously verified points. I guess I'll give my personal opinion on these. I think that I'm in favor of sort of removing the verification period altogether and making that a UI feature, because I think it simplifies the map for newcomers and just for us as we're thinking about sort of the game theoretic mechanisms of the map. It makes it simpler. I don't really think that that needs to exist at the smart contract layer. I think that that can just be something where people building map interfaces can decide how and whether they want to call out new points, and we can kind of leave that to happen there. What do people think about sort of this topic in these proposals? So there's a question. Can we review? I think my headphones just disconnected. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, question was, can we review why the verification process does exist on the smart contract layer? So I think that the main purpose behind the verification process in general is to call out new points so that people can see new points that need to be curated and reviewed. The reason that it's at the smart contract layer, from what I've heard, is actually because some of these contracts were sort of based on the old ad chain smart contracts, which had a verification period. But it's certainly something that I think some of us view as, you know, being able to remove in a future TCR.
Yeah, the idea is that it's anti-spam. Yeah. So that spammed points of interest don't make it through into the use cases, because use cases filter only verified points.
Yeah. So, and I should probably frame this a little bit better. I guess the big question is, do we want to do nothing, leave the map the way it is? Do we want to increase sort of the functionality of the verification process by making it more difficult to remove verified points? Or do we want to just completely get rid of the verification period and have new point callouts just exist in map interfaces?
I think we should get rid of it completely. Obviously, you know my feeling because we've spoken about it a few times.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, this is a leftover. This is a leftover piece of functionality from the model that the contracts were created on, and it didn't. I mean, there are some reasonings, but I think all of the reasonings we've heard about anti-spam, et cetera, they can be created by the developers of the tools or taken into account by the developers. So today we have a situation where new users are affected by this verification period where they are not unable to remove a point that they added by mistake, or unable to remove and replace a point that they want to edit, or whatever the case is, for 3 days. And so the complexity of, you know, filtering new points out ends up on the users instead of on the developers. And I think that by removing this period, we can just shift that complexity from new users, especially, to experienced developers. So I think, you know, I can recognize that there might be a case in the future where maybe it would be useful to have some kind of extra functionality during the pending period versus the verified period. But at the moment, I think that it's causing more confusion than it's worth. So, you know, my preference would actually be to probably decrease this to 0, or maybe even like 15 minutes or something like that, and just effectively get rid of it. I just see that it has no value in my mind.
I think Caleb is making a compelling argument here.
Are there any arguments against this?
This is Paul. I'm 4. So
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take silence as agreement. So I'll move on. So the next one is also about sort of creating a defender creators' advantage to balance the incentives of challengers and endpoint creators. But this one is not specific to verified points of interest. It's just for all points of interest. So maybe increasing the proportion of tokens required for challenging versus staking, or increasing the vote quorum. I don't think, kind of like Caleb was talking about, it seems like the dynamics of the map have sort of leveled out, where recently, sort of the rampant challenging that existed before, and some of what some of us saw as malicious behavior that was occurring before, we kind of figured out as a community how to deal with, and I think we have a good system kind of in place now for what the sort of implicit norms are for when to accept the challenge or when to vote for or against a challenge. But I don't think this is something that is as important as I once did, and therefore I don't think I'm really for either of these, but interested in hearing other people's opinions.
I just don't think it's necessary yet, personally.
Yeah. I don't either, and maybe we can keep these on the list. We can, keep them in a repository somewhere so we can come back to them if things change, as with all of these proposals, I guess. But I don't really see the value in this at the moment.
We might want to think about like future proofing. If these contracts are created, we probably want to make sure that they're future proof. I have trouble even considering beyond what's already there. What would help why we would need to implement this. I sort of think what's here is quite strong, and like honestly, if there's another set of challenges that the existing community can't overcome, and maybe a new set of users or one really big user like one big whale comes in and challenges points, really radically changes the map, that's almost like the new standard or the new consensus. And so I think that the rules of the TCR allow for that to happen, and it's kind of normal. So I'm not sure. I think that the rules today are quite reasonable, even though something could happen that kind of offends the existing community. I feel like that's okay and within the spirit of what TCRs do. So I'm not sure that we need to weight challenges differently.
Okay. So I'll move on. The next one, the goal that we were trying to accomplish is re-adding valid but remove POIs. So there were a couple of points that I've seen, like specifically the Zollverein coal mining complex, where the point, if you look on any map, whether it's Google Maps, OpenStreetMap, the phone map itself with the Mapbox overlay, that point was within the bounds of the Zollverein coal mining complex, but it was removed. So some people had proposed, giving users the ability to re-add a dead point, as opposed to having to completely stake a new one. I don't know if it's something that I think is that necessary, because I don't think that. I guess it's really, is it that much work to create a new point? But if it's not that much work from a technical standpoint to enable this, then I guess why not? I don't know. I guess I'm kind of indifferent on this one. I don't see it as
Who's
a
gonna
huge
pay for it?
problem. Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the gas cost would just be on the person restaking the point.
As far as I
Because I'm
understand,
assuming,
this is just a
well, I'm
repopulation
assuming
of the fields.
to lose. Yeah. Oh, I see.
So you
From
basically,
my point of view, I'm looking at it as a point removed and a point added. Now, if a point has been removed, that means it's been challenged, right? And if it's been challenged, somebody has your tokens. It's all gone. So to re-add the point, I mean, just maybe you could explain the process, or maybe I'm not understanding how this would go.
Yeah, so the foam tokens would be gone, but that point, the information around that point still exists on the map, which is why you can, in the map, filter and see dead points, removed points. But this would be a way to like quickly and easily just re-add the point to the map without having to create a whole new POI next to it. So you'd be kind of able to bring it back from the dead, and you would have to load it with your own foam tokens. So yeah, the foam tokens would be gone, but it would be a way to easily re-add a point that somebody felt like was valid but was removed without having to like restake a whole new point with new information. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does make, so it's more of a convenience
Yeah,
suggestion here than
yeah. And this
okay.
one isn't even really, it's not even a smart change to the smart contracts. It's more of like a fix on the UI side, and there's some
Right.
back-end things that would have to happen. I mean, so I think the question is, how important is this to people? Because if it's important, then it can be done. But if it's not important, then it's not really worth the time and effort, I think, from a technical standpoint.
It might be solved by that number 3 above, right? Because if you challenge based on state and the state is removed, and if you can still challenge a removed point, then you can challenge that the state should be updated to pending or updated to approved or something like
Wait, can you
that.
explain that one more time, Caleb? I think I kind of missed that.
So when we're talking about like updating the state of a POI based on challenges, we're updating the state from verified to removed, right?
Right.
And that's what the challenge is suggesting. So I'm saying that if challenges could be done on removed points, then what you're suggesting is updating the state from removed to verified.
Right. So it's basically, we could allow in this sort of POI editing an ability to edit back to life a dead point.
Potentially, I don't really see the case for it myself, but if it's that big of a deal that it's on the list, then I think, and we're talking about number 3 anyway, then I think we should explore that possibility.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like there's that much interest in being able to do this. So, I guess we can leave it out there in case things change, but it doesn't seem like it's something that is worth the effort at this point in time. All right, and then we've only got a few minutes left, and I don't want to go over time. So I'm just going to talk about one of these right here, and then we can end it. So the next goal was increasing voter participation, especially on points that have low stake, like the minimum of 50. As you can, I think if you're using the map now, if you've used it recently, you will notice that those challenges that are, 450 tokens don't really get a lot of interest from many voters because there's not as much of a financial incentive to vote on them. But I think one of the issues that we've we've seen is actually a UI issue, where on MetaMask, the way that MetaMask estimates gas prices shows the gas limit as being way higher than the foam contract actually uses. So it estimates your gas cost much higher than it actually ends up being. And I think some people have said that this may be a reason why there is low participation, because people are being scared away by the MetaMask estimates. And this is something that Caleb mentioned to me as being, it's probably a relatively quick fix. It's on the UI side. How do people feel about this? Has anyone been scared away because of the gas estimates when it comes to voting or registering a point or challenging or anything?
I think it's a nice way to reduce the barrier to entry for non-experienced users that maybe react or know about the normal gas costing.
Yeah, and since it's probably, I'm not exactly sure what kind of the workload looks like with that, but it sounds like it's something that's not that much work. I guess why not? Why not do this? I agree with your point, Arthur. Okay, so if there's no other comments around that one, I guess we can wrap it up. So we still have quite a few proposals left to go through, but we got through kind of like the bulk of the big ones. So I think we made some good progress. Let's have another call sometime soon to finish these up and then talk about the FIP process, which I think is important to start working through if we actually want to get these proposals that we are in agreement on moving forward. I think we need to figure out that FIP process first. But thank you everybody for joining, and I hope to see you again in a call soon in the future.
Thanks, Coleman.
Thanks for organizing. Thanks everyone for joining.
Let's go, man.
No problem. See you everybody.